So the college football playoff rankings came out for Week 15, and we all expected 1 through 3 to be exact same: Oregon, Texas, and Penn State. Oregon's been clearly the best team all year long, all three phases of the game, coaching staff, great program, no disagreement there whatsoever. I'm gonna jump down to number 4, right? I've been critical about Notre Dame in the past, especially because they lost to NIU, and for them to not be in the conference, I thought that was very unacceptable. But hey, besides I don't think their strength of schedule was that tough, but they've won out. They won convincingly, and like Marcus Freeman said in the interview, that was probably the best thing that ever happened for their team that year because they locked in and they won out, and they do have a Week 1 win at Texas A&M, which is very hard for any team to do. Georgia and Ohio State at 5 and 6. These are two teams that I think are extremely talented individually, but for some reason things just aren't clicking the way we're used to. Now we can say the transfer portal, we can say NIL because talent is more spread out, but Georgia and Ohio State, they both have two things, not two things, one thing in common. Both of their quarterback play has been very average this year. Will Howard, Carson Beck. Carson Beck was the guy projected to go first round, and I like Carson Beck last year. I thought he was a solid guy. Not great, but I thought he got the job done. But this year, I think he's struggling to see the field. He's thrown a lot of interceptions. But Georgia's been they're so talented, they've been able to overcome those things and win games. Ohio State the same way. No slight to Will Howard whatsoever. I don't think he's trash. I don't think he sucks. I don't think he's great. I don't think he's that. I think he's average, honestly. And, we're so used to seeing a program like Ohio State having great college quarterbacks. I mean, we go back to when I was a kid, right? Braxton Miller, J.T. Barrett, Dwayne Haskins, rest in peace to him. Justin Fields, C.J. Stroud. We've seen nothing but first-round quarterbacks or electric quarterbacks in college football. And Will Howard just isn't that. And I think that's why when we see certain of these games where Ohio State's playing teams like Nebraska close, or we see them lose to a Michigan. Well, I think that was also play calling. They weren't attacking Michigan at all. But when we see these close games, that's because they don't have great quarterback play. The same thing with Georgia. Football is about the quarterback nowadays. If you have a good quarterback along with a good team, you're going to win games. I'm not saying they have to be this generational talented guy. We don't need 5-star generational talent guys to win games, but they have to play good and be consistent. And Carson Beck and Will Howard, they've both been up and down. And here's why I get right to Tennessee. Tennessee should be ahead of Ohio State. I don't know why Ohio State's ranked number 6. They've lost to Oregon and they've lost to Michigan, a 5-5 Michigan team. Which, no offense to Michigan, they had a down year, but that was probably the worst Michigan team that we've seen in the last decade. Tennessee should be ahead of Ohio State. And I really don't want to crucify Ohio State for losing to Oregon in that game because that was a close game and Oregon's the best team for a reason. And they probably do have a chance to win the game if Will Howard doesn't slide to run the clock out. But losing to Michigan at 5-5, a team that struggled to have an offense and a quarterback, they had to get a billionaire to pay a high school kid $12 million for them to have a quarterback for next season. And in the past, when Harbaugh was at Michigan, you can say Michigan was a playoff team. They were a top 25, top 15 team, always in the Big Ten championship contention. For you guys to go out there and lose to that Michigan team this year with the guys you have at receiver, 2 NFL running backs, a great defense, it's unacceptable, Ryan Day. And honestly, you are lucky that you've been winning because some people say you need to get fired. I don't want to wish you to get fired. I don't wish any man to lose his job, but that was unacceptable. And that's why I think Tennessee should be ranked ahead of Ohio State. Tennessee's been rolling all year long. You have SMU at 8. SMU, they control their own destiny. Win the ACC championship game you guys are in. Indiana. Now, I know strength of schedule matters, but Indiana's a team where we have no expectations, right? They've always been bottom of the barrel in the Big Ten and in college football. We didn't expect anything from them. They had a new coach coming in from JMU, Coach Signetti, and he's done a great job. They look like they have a whole different identity. They've been dominant. They've been winning, and they have one loss, which was to Ohio State, which wasn't really a close loss, but I still say they should be in there. I'm not saying they should be, the top seed, but they should have a spot in the playoffs because they lost one game, and we didn't have any expectations for them, and they've done nothing but win games, and you should get rewarded for winning your games. Boise State, they control their own destiny, win your Mountain West championship game, and you're in. And to me, they are the best group of 5 team in the country, and I think they could pull off a win or two in these playoffs. Now, how do we feel about Alabama at 11? See, here's where it gets weird because we're so used to Alabama with Nick Saban, right, being 12-0, 11-1, that we think for some reason they are a trash team. Alabama's not a trash team. They are not bad at all. And to be honest, Milroe struggled, but I don't think Milroe fits DeBoer's offense, right? His offense, he needs a gunslinger, pocket passing guy. who can run a little bit, kind of like, Michael Penix, right? Michael Penix was a guy who could run, but he was a gunslinger. He stands in the pocket, he picks apart the defense, and he makes good passes. Milroe's a guy like Anthony Richardson, or, a dual threat type of guy where he's a, one read guy, get him in space, make electric plays. He doesn't fit the system, and that's part of the reason why they struggled, along with their play calling. I think their play calling has been horrible for Alabama on offense, and that's held them back. But I'll get back to Alabama in a second. I'm going to keep going down the list. Miami at 12. Miami's been very flawed all year long. I know they've won games. The strength of schedule was not great. They got a great transfer quarterback in Cam Ward, who's a first-round talent. Miami was electric on offense this year, right? Putting up points, putting up a lot of points. But their defense has struggled. I watched them play Georgia Tech. They could not stop the run, specifically outside runs. And that's been the problem for them all year long, is their defense. And that's why every game's been won in dramatic and crazy fashion, because they play these teams, they find themselves in a deficit, and they end up winning in the last minute. And eventually that catches up to you. You have to win convincingly if you are a great team, and they have failed to do that. Honestly, as an ACC guy myself, played at Pitt and wanting to see more ACC teams in the playoffs to give the conference more respect, I can't really defend Miami, because you go out there with a very favorable schedule, a great team, and you drop a game at Georgia Tech, which has never been a hard place to play at, ever. And then you lose against Syracuse when you were up 21-0. So I don't know. How do I defend you guys to make the playoffs in that sense? Ole Miss does not deserve to make the playoffs. I was a big Ole Miss guy, and I still am. And I hate that I have to say this, but Ole Miss, you guys had all this hype around the portal, recruiting class, Jackson Dart returning for, his fourth year or whatever it may be. And you went out there, and I know, I made a bit about Lane Kiffin talking about the SEC being the hardest conference, but you lose to Kentucky, and I forgot who else they lost to, but they were unranked as well. Unacceptable, man. They don't deserve it. Honestly, South Carolina should be over Miami and Ole Miss. I do think people are being dramatic with Alabama, because Alabama isn't a bad team. We're just so used to seeing them with Nick Saban that we think that they're bad. But really, they have some holes. Like, they're not great. They have some holes, but they're still a really good team. And that's where I think really Alabama and South Carolina, they're both interchangeable. I have South Carolina over Miami and Ole Miss, like I said before. And really, I know where it comes down is the head-to-head matchup, right? Alabama did beat South Carolina. They won by 2 points, but they still won the game. So I guess you could say you could have Alabama over South Carolina. But tell me, what do you guys think about the college football playoffs? Who got snubbed? Who should be in? Who's getting favorable treatment?